Morning. I'm sorry, but I'm still kind of thinking about soups and suffering with what Keith had said earlier. Anyway, sorry, Keith. It was just still on my mind. But hopefully you're not suffering after all the soup that we have. But it is going to be good. So anyway, let's get started, shall we? Sometimes as we're going through life, we can get to a point to where life starts to get pretty mundane, let's say. Sometimes our days can kind of start to get ordinary or monotonous. And we just kind of get into this routine of our day-to-day tasks and things that we normally fill our day with, almost to the point to where we start getting this tunnel vision about us, and we're only seeing things that are right in front of our faces, and it's like we're almost blinded to the things that are all around us. You drive down the same street every day. Well, you start to kind of not even notice the things that you're driving by because you do it so often, right? Unless there's like a brand new sign or something that goes up that catches your attention. But things get so routine like that for us that we're almost blinded to those surroundings. And I think sometimes that can also affect us on a spiritual level too. What I mean is sometimes we get so focused on everything that is a part of our normal day. And since we're concentrated on those things so much, we might not recognize spiritual opportunities that are around us. And I think it's easy for that to happen, to be so busy that we don't see or we don't even recognize windows of opportunity or occasions for evangelism. Whether we see it or not, there are opportunities for evangelism that are around us more than we might think. But the only way we might see that is if we are purposely, trying to force ourselves to be aware of that, or proactive in seeking it out, or we are intentional about it. And so, what I want to talk about this morning along those lines is this idea of spiritual radar. Turn the remote on, Dylan. There you go. Spiritual radar. There you go. You think about what a radar system does. I think we're all familiar with it. But, what a radar system does, it's a system that sends out radio signals, right? And those signals go out, and if they bounce off of objects, they'll come back to you. And it'll determine, where those things are, how far they are away. Some systems even tell you how fast those objects are moving. So it helps you, locate things. It helps you navigate a route, and it detects things that are in the area. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about, going about our life with our spiritual radar turned on, so to speak. Okay, so that we can locate and recognize spiritual opportunities that might be around us. I hope that makes sense. Okay, that's what we're talking about. When you go back to Jesus' life, there are three things that we see with him that I think is good for us to model. And that is that Jesus was aware, Jesus was proactive, and Jesus was intentional. And I believe when we have our spiritual radar on, that's what it can cause for us too. It can cause us to be aware, it can cause us to be proactive, and it can cause us to be intentional with our evangelism. And that's really how I want to frame that in the world and realm of evangelism. So let's talk about those 3 points. When you have your spiritual radar on, all right, it causes you to be aware. Awareness. Jesus had an awareness about him. He was aware of his surroundings and the people that were around him all the time, and that's how he operated. You remember back in Luke chapter 19, as he's passing through Jericho, it says that he looked up and he saw Zacchaeus sitting in that sycamore tree. And he said, "I'm going to stay with you today." When Jesus had people following him around, In Matthew chapter 15, he had an awareness about him to know that, hey, these people have been following me around and they're probably really hungry. I don't want to send them away hungry because they might faint on the way. He had an awareness about him. In Luke chapter 7, Jesus is in the city of Nain, and as he is approaching the gate of the city, he notices this dead man being carried out by these pallbearers, and there's also a woman there. Well, it's his mother, and she's also a widow. And it says that he felt compassion for her. And so he just goes up to the man, and he touches the coffin, and the man sat up, and he starts speaking. And just started to speak, and Jesus gave him back to his mother like it's no big deal. Just walking through the city, hey, let me raise your son up and give him back to you. You don't see that happening every day. But Jesus had that kind of awareness about him that you see just while he's just walking. He's walking through the city. He's just going about his day is in his ministry, and that's what you see. When you have your spiritual radar on, that's what it can cause for you too, an awareness about you. All right? You're aware of your surroundings and the people that are around you that you might have a spiritual opportunity with. I'll give you an example. It's been some years ago, well, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, but my wife and I, just went out shopping and we went thrifting. We love Plato's Closet. I don't know if you like going to Plato's Closet. It's a good store. Anyway, found a lot of good stuff in that store. We were there one night, and it was like, and I think it was around Christmas time or something. Anyway, we were there, and it was just us, it was the workers, and it was like one other family in there. It was actually a mother and her daughter. And as we were kind of browsing around, I kept hearing their conversation. And the mother, the little girl was there, and she just kept trying on clothes and stuff, and she kept coming back, and how does this look, and all that stuff, right? And I could tell. I could just tell that life had been kind of a struggle for them. Life had really been a struggle. Maybe they were on a strict budget or something, but the mother was there and wanted to get her daughter some clothes. Well, I kept hearing that, and I told my wife about it, and I said, let's hang around for a minute. And they finally wrapped up, and the little girl was done trying on the clothes, and we meet them up at the register. And I said, hey, don't worry about this. We're going to take care of this for you. Now look, I don't say that just to kind of exalt what we did. I'm not trying to do that by telling you that story. I'm just trying to say that it's things like that to where if you just had your spiritual radar on, if you just opened your ears or lifted up your eyes, you might be able to see windows of opportunity to do something like that for someone. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so sometimes we are not necessarily lacking in opportunities. We are lacking the awareness to see them. We're not necessarily lacking in opportunity. There's opportunities all around us. What we're lacking sometimes is just the awareness to actually see and notice those things. Okay? And maybe that's something that we need to just, try to get better at. This is too where you sometimes hear people talk about being mission-minded. You ever heard that phrase, being mission-minded? Right? Well, this is a part of that, okay? This awareness is. Being aware of the opportunities and who's around you is part of the overall mission, ultimately, which is introducing people to Jesus and helping them to get, to where they can get a relationship and have a relationship with God. There's a phrase, too, that floats around the school up at Bear Valley that somebody came up with a few years ago. I don't even remember who it was. But it's a phrase that kind of continues to be put on T-shirts and bracelets and all of those things. But it's a very simple phrase. Think souls. Think souls. That's it. Maybe I have a T-shirt. Maybe you see me wear that around. But that's it. It's very short. It's very simple. But I think it's powerful. But that's what this spiritual radar, this awareness of who is around you is about. You're thinking about people's souls. Okay, you're thinking about what opportunities are around me where I could have an impact on their soul. That's ultimately what you're trying to think about. Okay, like as you live and as you go about your day. I'll give you one more example, and then we'll move on to the next point. Okay, a lot of us, I think, are familiar with Acts chapter 17. Acts chapter 17, Paul is in the city of Athens, and he had observed, it says, that their entire city was full of idols. And he also observed that, they were quite religious in that aspect. Now, he had already spoken a little bit in their synagogue, and then he was also in the marketplace every day talking and conversing with all of those people there. But then some of the philosophers of the town, they were conversing with him, and they wanted to know more about what he was talking about. They said that he was a proclaimer of strange deities, you remember. So they wanted to hear more about this. And so they brought him to the Areopagus. And Paul, being aware of the things that he had observed, saw a window and seized an opportunity to talk to them about an altar that they had set up. The whole city, they had a bunch of altars, but he talked to them about one altar in particular that they had set up that read on it, "To an unknown God." Like just in case we didn't cover it or we're missing one, some God out there, this altar is for him. And he talked to them about that altar and proceeded to talk to them about the God who made the world and all things in it, the one who is Lord of heaven and earth and doesn't dwell in temples made with hands. And so, listen, when your spiritual radar is on, that's when you too will see opportunities to speak, just like Paul did. He's in the city of Athens. He notices, he's aware of all of these things, and then, hey, he saw a window. So that too can happen with you. But, maybe you're just talking with somebody and something comes up about, I don't know, how they maybe feel empty inside or something. They feel empty or they don't have many friends or something like that. Well, there's your window. That's your occasion. That is your opportune time to tell them something about God or tell them something about the church or say, hey, we get together sometimes during the week over at so-and-so's house. We have a lot of fun. We eat together. We hang out together. I think you should come. That'd be really, really good, That's what we're talking about. That's your window. Be aware and take those opportunities when you see them. Okay, that's the first one. That's point number one. The second one, when your spiritual radar is on, it causes you to be proactive. It can cause you to be proactive. When our minds are on the mission, when we have our spiritual radar on, it's going to cause us to have a proactive approach in our evangelism. There were times, too, when you see Jesus being proactive or taking the initiative. You really see it when he first went to the men who would become the apostles. He goes straight to them and he says, hey, follow me. Well, that's pretty straightforward, right? With the healing at Bethesda in John chapter 5, Jesus knew that there was a man there that was sick, and he just goes straight up to him and he asked him, do you want to get well? Do you wish to get well? In John chapter 9, he sees a blind man as he passed by and he heals the man. In Mark chapter 5, he goes all the way over into the country of the Gerasenes, and he goes over and he heals that Gerasene demoniac, the man that lived among the caves and had legion that was living with him. Legion, all the many demons, right? So Jesus, that's how he operated. Jesus would preach, he would teach in the synagogues, he created opportunities for conversation and for people to learn. Jesus was proactive in his ministry. That's the point that I'm trying to get across. He was proactive in his ministry. Part of us having our spiritual radar on is so we can know what's around us and we can take the initiative. Evangelism is not a passive approach. It's very much an active approach. Okay? And look, you can't just always wait for things to come your way and fall in your lap either. You can't just sit around and wait for that all of the time. Not in the world of evangelism. Okay, sometimes you have to go and create the opportunities. You have to be the one to go and initiate that conversation. You talk with the person who is serving you at that restaurant. Talk with the person who cuts your hair. You go and invite your neighbor over for dinner. Literally. Right? Have a different approach to this instead of always thinking that you're just going to wait for people to walk into your life. Look, sometimes that might not happen. You've got to create those moments. I also know that there are some people that look at the Great Commission with Matthew 28, 19, and 20. And they'll say, well, and they're breaking it down. They'll say, well, that really means as you're going. As you're going, you should make disciples by baptizing and teaching them, and meaning that it's a part of your life, and it's what you do. And I don't dispute that. I agree with all of that. As you live and as things happen in your life, try to make disciples. I get that. I understand the way that it's structured in the original language. But I think sometimes people take that and they almost use that as an excuse to not be proactive in following the command. Almost like it gives them an out, so to speak, to be less active in their evangelism. And look, I'm all for going about your evangelism in a natural way and letting it be very natural. I'm all for that. But I think sometimes some people might think, well, since that's what it means, I'm just going to do it whenever it's the right time for me. Just whenever it's the right time. They might not prepare, they might not plan anything out, and so to some, they end up taking more of a passive approach instead of being proactive with the command. I also think another element to us being proactive is that we prepare. You guys have heard me talk about this before, but I do believe in proactively preparing or being preemptive with how you go about things. By that, I mean anticipating things that you might encounter and being proactively preparing beforehand. That's what I mean. For instance, if you know that so-and-so, you would like to go talk to so-and-so, whoever it is, but you know that they have a different faith background than you. Well, part of proactively preparing for that would be you going and actually digging into what they know and what they have grown up with maybe and what they believe and stuff. That way, whenever it comes time for you to actually have a conversation, or hopefully that conversation does come up, you know where they're coming from. You've proactively prepared yourself to be able to have that conversation. Okay, on the other side of that, you need to proactively prepare for when they might ask you a question about your faith, right? It goes both ways, but that's what I'm talking about. Proactively prepare with your evangelism like that. Be ready. Be ready to have conversations with people. Know where people are coming from with all of those things, okay? And one other thing I will mention about being prepared like that. If you pray for opportunities to meet people who are seeking, if you are praying to Lord, put somebody in my life that is seeking the truth. God, help me to come across somebody that I can talk to about the Word, that I can talk to about the Bible, or something like that. Look, if you're going to pray for that, be ready for that. You understand what I'm saying? If you're going to pray for it, at least do your due diligence in being prepared and being ready for that. I mean, if you think about it, what real sense does it make for you to pray about something and, for God to give you an opportunity and then you not go and prepare yourself for when it might come? Well, that doesn't make any sense. So just another thought, just something to think about with that, okay? Just keep that in the back of your mind. If you're going to pray for it, let's just prepare for it and be ready for that occasion. Finally, when you have your spiritual radar turned on, it causes you to be intentional. And I think this could go with being proactive a little bit, but there is an intentionality that comes with this because, you're aware of who's around you, and you can be very intentional about how you go about things. And intentionality is, when it comes to evangelism, is a really good way to operate. And I love that word, intentionality. Okay, everything is deliberate. Everything has a reason. You do things in a very purposeful and a very logical way. Jesus also operated like this too. You think about John chapter 4 and verse 4, it says that Jesus had to pass through Samaria, right? It was necessary for him to do so. Why? Well, he's going to go and speak to a woman at the well. And then ultimately that woman is going to go to the city of Samaria and proclaim the news about Jesus, and then that's how that started in Samaria. Okay? But he was intentional about also the apostles that he chose, praying the whole night before that decision was made. He had prayed about it and planned who he would choose. He would intentionally ask questions that forced people to think deeper, taught parables that were intended to make people wrestle with the truths that were in them. And maybe the biggest example of Jesus being intentional was when we read about how he set his face toward Jerusalem. That's a very intentional thing to do. He knew that that's where it eventually had to go. And so that's where he was on his way to. A lot through Luke especially. But Jesus was intentional with everything he did in his ministry. There were no wasted moments. There were not wasted moments with Jesus in his ministry. And I think that's key for us to understand with this whole idea about being intentional. No wasted moments. Okay? Nothing was left hanging on the table. All right? That's Jesus operated very specifically. All right? If we have our spiritual radar on, it's going to cause us to be intentional with the way we go about things as well. You're going to be deliberate in the words that you say to people when you're having conversations. You may specifically say things that take the conversation to a spiritual thought. You may throw out a question that makes them think about their life or the way that they might be living. Or maybe it's a question about a specific teaching that, hey, maybe you would like them to, consider. Think about this. Maybe they don't really have the full truth of it yet. You may be specific about the places that you frequent also with this intentionality, right? There may be, a server at a restaurant that maybe you have spoken with in the past. Maybe you saw some potential there for a Bible study. I'm going to go back there. I know she's working or he's working at this place on this day at this time. I'm going to go back there and I'm going to request them. I'm going to start that conversation up again. That's an intentional move. Okay? And you try to build a relationship with them. And, little by little, you keep feeding them bits of truth. Maybe you do that with somebody that you have cut your hair. I specifically go, have a place that I go, maybe for that reason, right? But you have this going on, right? You're being very intentional about things. You purposely have specific people over to your home, even. You might invite somebody who is not a Christian over to your home because you're trying to work on them, because ultimately the goal is you want them to have a relationship with Jesus just like you and everybody else does, right? So you invite them over to your home. Well, maybe you know that they are in a particular line of work. Well, brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so also happens to be in that particular line of work. And so you're going to, try to schedule that and set that up and say, hey, I want you to come over to the house Tuesday night. Let's have some dinner. Okay, and I might bring a friend over or something. Well, okay, now you go back to the other, brother or sister and say, hey, there's so-and-so that I've got coming over to the house Tuesday night. Do you think that you could make yourself free? Right? Because they are in actually this particular line of work. You do that kind of work. And I think you guys could actually really, really connect over that. You see where this is going? That's an intentional move right there. That's what you want to do. Okay, that is the approach that's good. That's a good approach, okay? You see, you can kind of orchestrate things like that and plan those things out. But look, again, it's all in an effort to try and reach their soul so that they will make Jesus their Lord just like you have. That is the entire point. That's why we do these things, okay? Evangelism is very, very intentional when you really want to do it well. Okay, you're doing these kinds of things. You are orchestrating things, you're planning things, you're networking. I love that word too, you're networking, right? Actually, just this past week, I know of somebody that is, they're actually trying to work on this person. And I got news that they actually might be showing up to worship, maybe today or maybe next week at this particular place. Well, what did I do? I said, hey, start a group message with so-and-so and so-and-so and tell them, hey, they might be coming to worship on Sunday. You might make your lunch plans free and take them out to lunch because we're trying to get them, right? That's the whole point. Orchestrate things. Be intentional. That's what you can do, okay? So the idea of a spiritual radar with evangelism is all about us just being aware of our surroundings and the people who are around us. We are proactive. And we take the initiative, we take opportunities when we see them, and we are very intentional with how we go about all of that. We see it in Jesus, we see it in Paul. I would say let's try to develop that in us and for ourselves as well so that we can be better in our evangelism. Okay? We want to be good, we want to be better in our evangelism and grow even from where we are. Listen, we offer an invitation almost every week, okay, for anybody. We offer it for people who don't have a relationship with Jesus. And if you want to make that known, and if you want to talk about starting that relationship with Jesus, we can help you. We also offer it for those that already do have a relationship with Jesus, and maybe they need some prayers and some help and whatever they need from the congregation. We offer both of those at this time as we stand and sing.